What are your thoughts on AI, Salman? Because I know you're a very opinionated man. So,
Well, I mean, I do have opinions and I do think about things, but I don't necessarily express those always
oh, express it
publicly.
now. Do you want to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I could. I think I mean, I've read about AI. I read Nick Bostrom's book, Super Intelligent, I think it was called, but years ago. And I think it's a very powerful tool.
Okay.
And I don't have anything, negative to say about it. I think that it's like most things that are powerful tools. They can be used for, things that are very positive, or they can be used negatively. So, um, I mean, based on my understanding, I'm not an expert in it by any means, but it seems to me that there's this idea that AI at some point in the future could reach general level human intelligence.
Okay.
And from what I've read or understand, it's nowhere near that. So it can do things like play chess or go or, write a description for, it can do all kinds of things, write code, you know, um, there's lots of things that it can do that I'm not even aware of, but I think it's not what people who are listening to the news, and I don't know. I just don't think it is. Nothing is what it seems, it is what I think. So,
I think it's
but
valid.
it's a very powerful, it's interesting that humans could come up with, these massive large data models and can leverage all that data to, create an AI that can be useful, as a tool for people. I
So,
mean, it's interesting.
do you know Wing Lam?
I do.
Wahoos?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. I was talking to him about AI and he
Mhm,
had a whole bunch of thoughts that he had to share, like stadiums. Like, he didn't say which stadium,
mhm,
but he said that they have their own large language model that they're training so that when guests come in, they know how much they're spending,
mhm,
but that they can identify what their likes are or not to help with the hospitality and probably increase the P&L to some extent.
mhm.
What do you see AI in your business of restaurants like PizzaNista? Do you see how it might help it or hurt it?
I think that in any business, even mine included, with restaurants, that there could be applications for AI. And I just think it really depends on how you think about your operations and what your intentions are in terms of what your guest experience
Mhm.
is. So, yeah, I'm sure there will be lots of applications for AI. I don't know exactly what they are, but, at the end of the day, um, there are certain advances in technology that become really pervasive and they disrupt, whatever preceded it to the point where it becomes obsolete. And you can see that in music, with how we used to have records, and then it went from records to 8 tracks, and then to
Yeah.
tape cassettes, and then CDs, and then MP3s, and
It
all the,
cannibalizes,
yeah,
yeah, the
essentially.
incumbent.
So I think that, unlike um music, and unlike that type of product or experience,
Mhm.
food is just one of those things that I still think that people benefit from eating things that are real and made in a way in which other people interacted with it, because there's
Yeah.
something about, ingesting food and having that experience with others that just don't see how AI can replace that, I guess. I guess there are ways in which AI can create efficiencies perhaps
Yeah.
in the production, but even then, you know, there's something that might be lost,
Have
you
you
know?
heard about that restaurant they're testing at the UCLA campus or just off of it? And the entire back is prepared and ran by robots, and they're feeding their own large language model to do so. So it's like a testing ground. Have you tried it yet?
I've never
They still
tried it.
have physical servers and everything,
Yeah,
so the hospitality side is still human,
yeah,
but they're testing it. Yeah, I just heard about it
yeah.
recently.
And, I may be just completely naive in thinking that, um, AI couldn't essentially do a better job at connecting humans or with humans
Yeah,
than
yeah,
maybe other humans because, yeah, uh, it's possible, I don't think it's impossible. So, um, I'm not certain about it, I just don't know. It's interesting to think about,
yeah.
But from a operations point of view, I could see that being interesting because, one of the reasons why societies this large exist is because at some point, some group of people exploited a different group of people to
Yeah.
build whatever exists, right?
Yeah.
So I think that in that sense, exploiting technology is probably a better way to go,
Okay.
because it doesn't, create these, lopsided, all this lopsided stature in society. But I don't know. It's a lot to think about. But
But you like thinking. You're a
yeah, no.
cerebral guy, especially for a skater.
I mean, I like to read, and I'm interested in learning. I do appreciate taking the time to learn about new things, and I like to challenge like my own sort of conditioning, I guess, in a way, because we're all born at a certain point in time, which in a certain environment, in like a certain collective mindset around, whatever environment or society we grew up in. So there's a lot of things that we we tend to be conditioned from a very young age and even indoctrinated. And then at some point, you know, a lot of folks either just continue to carry on those traditions, or you can take a conscious effort to challenge whatever conditioning you've been subject to and whatever indoctrination you've been subject to. And I think that's an important thing,
Oh,
for
well,
myself personally. I don't know. I can't speak for others, but
yeah.
I like to do that. And it's not always a pleasant experience, but it's something that I think can help, I don't know, just create a more depth and character and richness in like understanding or perceiving our experience in life,
Yeah.
in general.
Well, I've known you for quite some time,
Yeah.
and you've evolved quite a bit. That's one thing you have, at least as long as I've known you.
Mm.
You haven't really been stagnant. I mean, I'm sure there were times you might have felt that way. I don't
Mhm.
know, but you've always seemed, or at least, yeah, as long as I've known you, you've always kind of kept growing. Before it was a buzz phrase to say, self help or,
Yeah.
even mental awareness. Like you were doing a lot of those things, in
Mhm.
my opinion.
Yeah. I think yeah, I think that's one of the like kind of sublime joys in life is to just challenge your own status quo.
Yeah. Well, you're curious by nature,
Yeah,
it
and that,
seems
and
like.
and that's the other thing. Yeah, curiosity. I mean, that makes life fun,
I think so.
I think it makes life fun.
So, more thoughts
So,
on the future.
yes.
How do you see the future of restaurants going? Because I know we've talked offline about different strategies and tactics that you're thinking about for your business, but
Mhm.
like, how do you see the future of restaurants? Because it's getting harder. You've talked about inflation. I mean,
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. I think it's difficult to generalize because,
okay.
markets are very dynamic and volatile and vital. They have a lot of vitality in their own. And what I mean by that is that, geographically, like an urban environment is different than a suburban environment. It's different from a rural environment. There's lots of it's hard to judge what the restaurant business is going to be in LA versus like Columbus, Ohio, or
Yeah, yeah.
you know, uh, Buchanan, Michigan or something,
Oh,
you know
you
what I'm
thinking of
saying?
Redbud?
Yeah,
That's why
or
you
like the
said
little town
Buchanan.
that I was in, Three Oaks, it's just it's so different,
Yeah.
So, it's gonna be whatever the people who are operating restaurants want it to be. And I think that there's room for all kinds of different concepts across the spectrum.
Well, if you're
So,
comfortable sharing, what are some things that you're doing, or do you wanna share?
yeah, well, I think, you know, um,
'Cause I think you've done cool stuff, like the San Mateo store. It's and you
San
I think
San
you were
Marino.
interviewing San Marino,
Yeah,
I was
San
thinking San
Marino.
Mateo.
Yeah.
But that story, I think you did an interview where you were talking about it, and you were expressing to
Mhm.
whoever did the interview with you that it's a lifestyle brand. And that's what you've always talked to me about
Yeah.
PizzaNista.
I mean, that's just a, generic term to speak to people who or to speak in generalities, but I
Yeah,
mean, it's really like Pizzanista, the way I viewed it is I've always wanted to have my own skateboard company, and
yeah,
I've said this before.
yeah, yeah.
I just didn't want to make skateboards, even though we do brand, boards. We're not a skateboard manufacturer. Most skateboard companies are not manufacturers. They're just marketing companies.
Yeah.
They put graphics, they put a team together, graphics. They are great at making videos and printing designs on t-shirts and hoodies and it's beautiful, it's a great thing, but they're not manufacturers, they don't actually make
Not all of
anything.
them are George, pal.
No, they're not. There's very few that actually make anything, so that's not a fault and it's not a bad thing, but you know um I also, in that vein, have a skateboard company, but we also make food, you
Yeah,
know? So that's just so when someone says, "How do you differentiate your restaurant?" I go, "Well, it's not a restaurant. It's a skateboard company."
yeah,
So there you have that's the answer.
yeah. No, I feel it.
It's very differentiated.
I mean,
Just because of the perception of the founder of how I think about what it is.
yeah,
So, to answer your question, I think that, what interests me is either to continue to build a retail experience into um, the hospitality experience
yeah.
and blend that and to continue to scale that. And also other experiences like, I've been working on a concept that would be essentially a music venue that has a pizzanista and a bar, and like so you create this whole experience around the culinary experience, and that's what interests me because I think that people have to. I think in the future you're going to have to offer a more interesting reason for people to come to shop at retail than just being a retailer.
Almost like micro Disneylands. You know what I mean? Where they create a certain
Well, it's very
feeling when you first walk in.
well, there's that, and I think the other thing for us is to really, be intentional and to be very focused on exactly what it is, So, there was a conversation came up recently with another pro skater about, it'd be cool if there was a spot that just had a mini ramp, and it was like guests could use it, and there's the restaurant. It's not a skate park.
Well, you wanted to do that
Well, yeah, we were
a
working
hot
on
bit
that.
ago.
Yeah, we were working on it, prior to, the world closing.
And the building owner being kind of a
Yeah, and
dick.
the building well, yeah, there was, I don't know. I don't have any bad feelings
I
about
got you.
any of
No,
it,
no.
but, it just is what it is, and, you know, um, some people operate differently than I do, but, yeah, anyway, the building got sold. We didn't get to realize it. It was bad timing. The
But
whole
I
thing.
took you on a tangent, but you
Yeah.
were talking about how you were gonna do that, or
Mhm.
that's what somebody was suggesting, and so you wanna connect. So question.
Well, no, so I think, I've seen things around the world. There's certain limitations or certain obstacles that exist in our society that don't exist elsewhere, right?
Such as?
Well, we live in a very litigious society, so there's, you know, there's a cause to be concerned about liability,
Oh, yeah, insurance is
just
gonna go
in
up just
general.
having a ramp.
Yeah, so I think California is a really challenging place, regulatory, uh, legally, all that. So it's challenging to think about outside the box, really.
Yeah.
So anyhow, these are things that might have to happen somewhere else. But I think it is part of telling the story of the PizzaNista brand is to have some kind of experiential um, concept. And I think blending retail and I was thinking about reaching out to Tom Campion actually. I was like,
Tom Campion
he's the
is
founder of Zoomies,
Oh, okay.
and there's I don't see any reason why we couldn't blend the two,
That'd be dope.
and I just think that there's something about, there's the youthfulness of, you know, the type of, pizza and the fun aspect of it, and then you have, this company that has stores all over the country.
What
So
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about doing something like that. And we're testing it in San Marino, um, but the skateboard market's dead right now. It's very dead. A
It's
lot
a
of
hard
people
market,
are
yeah.
they're struggling, and a lot of kids do skate, but as far as the actual market for hard goods goes, it's pretty dead.
So, when you were talking about the experience side of it, I remember, I'm a kid of the '90s,
Hmm.
and I was racing, and I was sponsored by some board shops. My favorite board shops to go to, they'd have PlayStation
Hmm.
and Tony Hawk Pro Skater,
Hmm.
and you had that shop kid culture, right? Where people just hanging around talking shit,
Yeah.
but it was like a water cooler for that culture,
Yeah.
and I loved going because I was able, because nobody in moto at the time, in '90s especially, they knew about skateboarding, so I was able to go hang out with the skater kids,
Hmm.
but we'd play Tony Hawk Pro Skater in the middle of the shop.
Yeah.
Customers would come in, and it was just hilarity, right? I
Yeah.
mean, but it was almost like we all worked there and none of
Yeah.
us were getting paid.
Yeah.
But do you have that shop kid culture at the pizza stores where they just hang out
Yeah,
there?
I think that's the goal, is to create that. This particular store is pretty small,
Mhm.
so we haven't
You have an outdoor footprint.
there's an outdoor footprint, but we didn't really, I think that there are some really cool shops, that incorporate things like couches and coffee
Yeah.
tables and kind of like more of like a lounge vibe. And I think that definitely is, I think that's something very interesting to think about incorporating into the future.
Yeah, because they would watch videos over and over.
Yeah.
Like
So,
Shorty's video. I remember when that came out, that thing was on loop.
yeah. And I think that because video is now, on the phone and it's so pervasive and just so
That's true,
common,
huh?
it's not as interesting, people don't pop VHS tapes into the thing anymore, it's just, so I think, from that standpoint, I don't think it's that interesting. And, the other thing I have to say is with Pizzanista, my intention with the stores has always been to be a more lo-fi environment where it's actually an experience where you get away from your phone
No,
and you
no.
get away
I got
from
you.
media. It's a place where, the lighting's set up so that, it creates an atmosphere that's relaxed, and you're just with, if you look at the way we design the booths, for example, in downtown LA, they're pretty high so that they
Yeah.
separate you from
Oh, I
the
love them.
people
Yeah.
that are sitting behind you.
I wish
So
there was more.
so it creates this sense of, privacy,
Yeah.
for your experience. And yeah, there's no TV or, we do play
No,
music.
but but the music just enhances the
Well, it's
experience.
part of it. So that's really something that we thought about. And
Intentional.
yeah, it's an intention
Yeah,
to bring you into a space where you're not inundated with visuals and more media. You
yeah,
have that in your pocket, you know,
I do. So, what are your thoughts on crypto?
on crypto. I actually really like crypto. I think the thing that I like about it is, for one, the transparency. So, that's a cool thing in and of itself,
Yeah.
because everything gets recorded on the blockchain, so it's public, and it's a decentralized,
Well, some are.
Well, some, yeah. So we've seen with Celsius and some of these other, um, you know, exchanges where they were centralized and, um, people got taken advantage of, and it gives crypto a bad rap. But I have to say, like, I had a little bit of money in Celsius, and I was surprised that I got any of it back.
Yeah.
So I think through there, I think that was pretty.
Did you have any Luna?
I did not.
Okay.
But I guess what I'm saying is what's interesting is it's cool to see that I feel like Celsius did the right thing, you know?
Okay.
They went through bankruptcy, they went through a reorganization, and they actually, a lot of people, most people who were holding crypto there got some portion of their money back, you know?
Do you see people actually using crypto to pay for things?
I've used crypto to pay for things. I don't know about others,
Yeah.
and
Would you incorporate it in your business, or do you already have it in your business?
I've thought about incorporating it into the business, but I haven't found, um, uh, I guess I haven't found, a way to do that that doesn't create some type of operational issue.
Yeah, because even Coinbase, they offer it, but
Yeah, I think,
it's not at all seamless.
yeah. So I think the issue is that, if someone has access, for example, let's just say an employee to whatever platform is, um, validating receipt of payment, for
Mhm.
example,
Yeah,
it's like, don't they have the same access to then distribute that to themselves or someone else? Or, it just doesn't seem secure in that way.
I got you.
And so there's that issue. And then the other one is it doesn't integrate into any of the point of sale systems.
No, not
So
currently,
I
not the
think,
popular ones.
and I think the other issue with that, and it seems to me like the if you if you look at what crypto came out of, in 2008 with Bitcoin, I think the whole intention was to create a monetary system that's unregulated by the Federal Reserve and any central bank or
Any
anything like
government,
that,
yeah.
or any agency or anything. So I think that's also a conflicting idea when you think about integration into something that's completely compliant. It's fully compliant and has to be with whatever today's financial regulations are. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So that's
Yeah.
that's the hard part, and I think that's why, you have all this, there's a lot of uh scams, and then I don't know. It's kind of it's I love it. I think it's a great thing, but I don't like that people have had these awful experiences losing money. That sucks,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, it's part of adoption of new tech, right?
But that happens with anything, cash, credit cards. I mean,
People are
if you
still
think about
doing scams with,
fraud,
yeah.
it's
Wire fraud
everywhere.
is
It's
still
just that
there.
we're so accustomed to cash and we're so accustomed to credit cards, and we use them, and we understand to some degree that okay, we understand to the degree that I have this piece of plastic, and if I go into this store and I touch it to this thing, or I insert it or swipe it, it's gonna reduce, or it's gonna add whatever it's gonna do something that
You're supposed to add a layer of security, but
well, it's
no.
gonna do something that I'm familiar with,
Yeah.
which is it's gonna say, "You now owe this money back to this credit card company," or, "We just subtracted X from your bank account,"
Yeah.
right? So we understand that, but with crypto, um, even though that same thing's happening, because there's nothing tangible, it just makes it, that you can touch, I think it makes it a little harder to understand for people.
Well, I'm also of the opinion, while monopolies are not necessarily the supposedly commerce doesn't want monopolies, but that's the only way adoption really happens. And I'll give you an example. the DMV is a monopoly of the way that we have to register our cars.
Mhm.
They're trying out Tezos to title your car through, non-fungible tokens.
Mhm.
So the NFT technology isn't just JPEGs and shit like that.
Mhm.
It's meant to be a non-fungible token that could be used for something like a title of a car. But
Yeah,
if the
because it's unique.
DMV doesn't implement it, and there was like a third party or a private party that started doing this,
Mhm.
it can't truly gain traction of adoption because they're not the ones in charge. You know what I mean? It requires those monopolies to buy in. So JP Morgan
Mhm.
could easily make crypto that much more available if they
Mhm.
wanted to, but it's not in their best interest to. But they're also launching their own blockchain with Onyx,
Mhm.
and they have their coin, the JP coin.
Mhm.
So Jamie Dimon, whatever you want to think about him, he's
Mhm.
the CEO.
Mhm.
I'm always I'm very leery of, okay, so the powers that be,
Mhm.
they're controlling our ability to either have this adoption happen or not,
Mm.
which is why I liked crypto in the first place because it removed them from the equation.
Yeah.
But it's like we still need them a part of the equation because this generation and the incumbents, they don't want us to disrupt that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's just the classic um idea that, vested interest in anything is a stumbling block to progress.
Yeah.
It's just inevitable. I mean, it's because there's such a massive vested interest in the current financial systems and, oil and agribusiness, pharma, there's all these things that they're massive vested interest. It's very challenging for people that have that vested interest are not interested in disrupting that because they're obviously benefiting from it, and so to maintain the status quo, um, in a lot of ways benefits society and them,
Yeah.
because it's stable. It's
Yeah.
what people know. That's what I was talking about earlier. It's like the conditioning. You just accept that you're going to go to preschool and then to elementary school and then to high school and then to college and be in debt and get married and have some kids and wake up one day and realize like, oh, well, I should take a vacation now. But I don't know. It's just like,
I got you. No,
I
no.
just feel like, there's these mechanisms at work in society all over the world. And, um, the financial system has evolved over, thousands of years. It's not like, yeah, crypto could just disrupt it. It is making attempts to, but people who have a vested interest, they're going to fight,
Oh yeah.
they're not going to just, and you know what? I think there needs to be meaningful regulation around things like that
I agree
because
with
they
that
do affect so
wholeheartedly.
many people.
It's true.
So many people's lives can be affected positively or negatively. So I think, it makes sense for there to be some meaningful regulation around it that,
Agreed. Definitely.
you know, so I think, but I do like it. I think it's an interesting technology. I don't fully understand it. And I've been working on a way to integrate it into my business. Um, and it's interesting because it's a very polarizing thing. Crypto, people love it or hate it. Um, and I get that. And I think that because of how it's been, um, because of the things that have happened that are like slimy and scammy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a difficult, it makes it, I don't know. It's like pornography, in a way. You know what I mean? It's like,
Share. I'm so curious.
well, the point I'm trying to make is like, I don't know. I've been on this kick about like Larry Flint, because he was such a huge advocate for freedom of speech,
Yeah.
and First Amendment rights. And, you know, some of the stuff that he did, through his publication in order to bring awareness um to the importance of having like that right to express yourself,
Okay.
you know um I don't know. I'm kind of getting off on a tangent, I think, but
That's all right.
I just think that
I think it was a good soundbite that was coming. I like that porn is like crypto, or crypto's
um
like porn.
well, I guess what I mean is that it's a polarizing topic because
Yeah,
um you have this technology that could benefit so many people and reduce the costs and create efficiencies in capital markets across the world, and especially with transferring money, to places, organizations, whatever, um and maybe even stabilizing certain economies that have, very volatile financial markets. And um but yeah, it's also rife with scams,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
Cool.
So
We're good.
I don't know what the connection was to
With the porn.
porn,
You were
but
thinking Larry Flint. You were mentioning.
yeah, I don't know, whatever.